بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. صدق الله العلي العظيم، وصدق وبلغ رسوله النبي الأمين الكريم. مؤمنين ومؤمنات، brothers and sisters, السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. عظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم لمصابنا بالإمام العسكري عليه السلام. Condolences on the martyrdom anniversary of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, who is in fact one of the most oppressed Imams of Ahlul Bayt salawatullah wa salamu alayhim ajma'een. During his life and the house arrest that he was under and the complete surveillance that was on him and his family, including the ladies, making sure that no child is born from that family. And also at that time the Abbasis, they tried to use his brother Ja'far ibn Ali ibn al-Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam, who unfortunately decided to work with the authorities at the time, sold his religion and sold his hereafter for this world, and therefore he worked with Bani al-Abbas at the time, al-Mu'tamad al-Abbasi, who worked with him and announced him to be in fact the Imam. Even during the Imamah of Imam al-Askari, some people think this happened after the martyrdom of the Imam, and at the time of the 12th Imam Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. In fact, this happened before, because Imam al-Askari alayhi salam did not have children that people knew of, boys that would be the Imam after. And even the birth of the 12th Imam Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif was kept as a secret. Therefore, he did not have a known son, and therefore the Khalifa worked with Ja'far to suggest or to claim that Ja'far is the Imam of the Shia, not Imam al-Askari, and especially because an Imam has to have a successor, and the 12th has to be born. And since Imam al-Askari alayhi salam had no children, therefore the Imam Ja'far suggested that he was, and the Khalifa supported that. And eventually, after the martyrdom of the Imam, that was to be confirmed when he came to try and pray on the body, Salatul Mayyit, on the body, the blessed body of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. Yet that did not happen for him. Imam al-Hujjah Jalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif stopped that. He stopped him, though he was a boy, a young boy. He came and stopped him. He said, "Uncle, this is not your place." And he performed the salat. Imam al-Askari alayhi salam was, as I said, oppressed during his life and after his martyrdom. Throughout the centuries, subhanAllah, the city of Samarra was not a hospitable place to the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Throughout the time, it was different eras, different reasons, until, as some of you are aware and know, recently or in the recent years, they demolished or they blew up the shrine of the Imam salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, Imam al-Hadi and al-Askari, al-Askariyain as we know them. Nonetheless, the Imam, as we know, played a very important role in, number one, bringing into this world the 12th Imam, Ajalallah Ta'ala Farajahu Sharif. God's destiny had to happen. And number two, preparing the Shia for the time of the occultation. So he, even before him, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, so a couple of, 100 or so years before, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam already told the Ummah, the Shia, that there will come a time that the 12th Imam will come and he will go into an occultation, ghaiba, to the point that people ask, what is the benefit of the Imam during his ghaiba, the famous hadith that he is like the sun behind the clouds. That's how people benefit from the Imam. Nonetheless, Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, it was his time that he had to prepare people. Now he knows that soon after he is gone, he's martyred, the Shia do not have the Imam amongst them. They've always had the Imam, they've always had the access somehow. Even in prison, they had people who would go and visit the Imam and come back and give some news. If they had questions, they would send letters, and people were able to somehow communicate with the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, yet this is a time that people will not be able to, and so the Imam had to prepare the people. From earlier on, he worked on that, and some of the important work was his wasaya, his will and his wasiyya. And Islam tells us that we need to do the wasiyya always. To the point that I began with Surah Al-Asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that insan by nature, after swearing by Asr, insan by nature is in loss. Inna al-insana lafi khusr. Exception. In general, loss. What is the exception? One is illa alladhina amanu. They have to have faith. If one has no faith, they're in loss. Is that sufficient? No. وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. They have to do the good deeds. So faith reflects itself in action. Good deeds. Is that enough? The ayah says no. You have faith, you do good deeds, that's not enough. Why? The reason is we are not individuals, we are a society, we are social beings, we are human beings. Even our resurrection is not individual. And even our judgment is not only individual. Hisab, there is individual hisab and there is a hisab that is for the community and society. Ummah. And there is a kitab for the ummah as well. There is an account within our individual hisab that has to do with the community and the society as well. So every individual will also be asked about, besides the book of the Ummah, even an individual will also be asked about the people around them, what he as an individual or she as an individual did for the people. Did you do your duty, fulfill your duty? Did you invite your family? Tonight is the Shahada of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam. Did you make sure that you, at least in your house, bring the family together and talk a little bit about Imam al-Askari alayhi salam? Do we forget that in Qabr we will be asked about the Imams of Ahlul Bayt in the first night of our qabr, the malak, the angels will come and ask us. And that's it. That is what we say in the talqeen of the mayyit. Do we forget that when we go and perform the rituals for those who depart our world? Part of it is we start reminding them and ourselves, or ourselves and them, perhaps, in terms of a priority. That man Rabbuk, man Nabiyyuk, man Kitabuk, if the Malakan, they come and ask you about your God and your Prophet and your book and your Imams and your Qibla and so on, then answer them and tell them that Ali ibn Abi Talib Imami, wal Hasan ibn Ali al-Mujtaba Imami, and wal Hasan ibn Ali al-Askari Imami. والحجة ابن الحسن هؤلاء أئمتي بهم أتولى. These are my imams. I try and follow them. I try and make sure that I follow their leadership. How do I follow their leadership if I don't know anything about them or much about them? This is in fact our responsibility in terms of tawasi. وَتَوَاصَوْا. Insan is in loss unless they have faith, they have action, and they remind one another. They do the tawasi. It's our responsibility to make sure that we remind one another. And this is why the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, every one of them had a wasiyah, not just for their family, not just about their wealth. Oftentimes, our concern when we are doing a will, everybody should have a will. Inshallah, we understand that this is our religious obligation. كتب عليكم إذا حضر أحدكم الموت. It is an obligation that if you are coming to death, and all of us know that we are eventually coming to it, al-wasiyya, that we have to make the wasiyya. A wasiyya should not be limited to what do I do with my wealth. This is part of the wasiyya. Who gets what and what debts do I have first. In fact, first khums and debts. If you have any khums, you have to give it. Write it as wasiyya. Debts, min ba'di وصية يوصى بها أي أو دين. Dain is there, debts are there. Then the distribution. This is one aspect. So what is the wasiyah besides wealth and a wasiyah is about reminders. This is why it's important that you write in your wasiyah and make sure somebody, the wakil, that is the responsible of the executor, if you want, reads it to the people. Read your wasiyah, and therefore make sure that it has things like I remind you, usikum wa nafsi, or usikum bitaqwa Allah. Isn't that what Imam Ali alayhi salam did? All of the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, is this part of the wasiyah that la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimin? Make sure that you depart this world while you are believers, you are Muslimin. Make sure you perform your prayers, make sure you teach your children prayers. This is all should be part of your wasiyah. Every one of us should have that as a wasiyah. And the Imams of Ahlul Bayt did to teach us, in fact. So Imam Al-Askari alayhi salam, I want to inshallah wrap it with a few lines from the wasiyah of Imam Al-Askari alayhi salam. He says, أُوصِيكُمْ بِتَقْوَى اللَّهِ وَالْوَرَعْ فِي دِينِكُمْ. One is to be conscious of your duty to God. Al-wara' fi dinikum. Wara' is to make sure that you don't go into areas that are not permissible. Wara' is to be careful with your religion. Stay within the limits. Stay within what's permissible. Don't commit sins and so on. وَالْإِجْتِهَادِ لِلَّهِ. Strive for the sake of God. We strive for the sake of dollars, huh? And that's why some people, they say, in God we trust. That is what it means. It's actually the paper. وَالْعَيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. The people who wrote it there perhaps didn't mean it that way. They were believers and they believed in God. But the way we treat it, the way people treat it, is as if that is God. Huh? We work hard for the sake of the dollar. We don't work hard for the sake of God. Or how often do we, or which one is the priority? Inshallah, we have our priorities right. وَالْإِجْتِهَادِ لِلَّهِ وَصِدْقِ الْحَدِيثِ. To be truthful when you speak, to be trustworthy when people trust you with something. وَأَدَاءِ الْأَمَانَةِ إِلَى مَنْ ائْتَمَنَكُمْ. Whoever it may be, being trustworthy, Ameen, has no exclusions. The one who gave you or trusted you is a believer, non-believer, sinner, whatever they are. بَرٍ كَانَ أَوْ فَاجِرٍ. مِنْ بَرٍ أَوْ فَاجِرٍ وَطُولِ السُّجُودِ. One of the reminders of Imam Askari alayhi salam is to prolong our sujood. To prolong our sujood, because this is what brings us closer to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the hadith, if you want to be closer to him, more closer to his neighborhood. Imagine, the neighborhoods in this world, now you're in paradise. The best place, the prophets and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Ahlul Bayt, the best place. And then different neighborhoods, some closer, some further away. The longer you stay in your prostration, in your sujood, humbling yourself to God, the closer you are, inshallah, to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. وَحُسْنِ الْجَوَارِ. Be a good neighbor. Inshallah, I'll finish with this one. The wasiyah is quite long, and I urge mu'mineen and mu'minat, these are gems. The words of the Imams are gems. It is, I'm sure, available in every language you want. So make sure you search for the wasiyah or the will of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam for his Shia and read it. Last line I want to share is Husnul Jiwar, to be a good neighbor. Does it mean only to Muslim neighbors? Never. Any neighbor. And we know the very famous story of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with a neighbor who was not only non-believer, but also one who was very harsh and rude and very, in fact, abusive to the Prophet ﷺ. Yet the Prophet, in return, he was dutiful to him, made sure he visited him when he heard he was unwell, he was sick. The man said, "You're coming to now retaliate or tell me that you..." He said, "No. I am coming to visit you because visiting a sick person is my duty and you're my neighbor. I have to visit you." The man made sure at that very moment he decided to be a follower of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how the Prophet wants us. This is what the Imams remind us. This is one of the reminders and wasiyah out of the will of Imam al-Askari alayhi salam, that we are good to our neighbors. In fact, the Imam has many statements about the people of different groups of faith and different, in fact, schools of thought within Islam, that he says, make sure you go and participate in their funerals. Okay, oftentimes we only participate if someone from our community, from almost our family only. Okay, the bigger hearts community, a bigger heart like the prophets and the Imams, they would visit those who are faithful, believing people who depart this world. They visit them. The Imam tells us to be good to our neighbors regardless of what group, of what faith or what party they belong to, that we are good to them and we visit them, we're kind to them. And this is in fact what he says in the Imam Ali alayhi salam in the hadith. He says this is the essence of Islam in fact. The essence of Islam is to be good to one another, to be good to your neighbors. This is what makes us good believers. In fact, the Imam salawatullah wasalamu alayhi, despite his young age, the authorities and at the time Bani Abbas la'natullah alayhim could not withstand his presence any longer. Eventually, even though they had him under control, eventually they asked one of their people to put poison in the food of the Imam salawatullah wasalamu alayhi. Sallallahu alayka ya Aba Muhammad يا حسن بن علي أيها العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله يا وجيها عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. Imam al-Askari departed this world with a young man, young Imam, who was already hidden from the people. They prepared him, people gathered for the burial of the Imam. Suddenly they saw the young boy. May God grant us the opportunity to see our Imam. He comes, performs salat on the Imam. سعد الله قلبك يا صاحب الزمان. He has to hide from the authorities. His father is departed, he's martyred, he's killed by them. His own mother taken to prison. She spent years in their prison. سعد الله قلبك يا صاحب الزمان. He has to stay hiding while they keep his mother, who initially claimed she was pregnant, to keep them busy away from her son, the Imam of our time. Yet I say, Ibn Rasulullah, this is your calamity, but you yourself say about your grandfather, Abu Abdullah, لأندبنك صباحا ومساء, that you would remember him and mourn him every morning and every evening. What parts, Ya Ibn Rasulullah? He describes it himself. He says, As-salamu ala Shaykh al-Khadir. As-salamu ala, salam upon the beard that's dyed with the blood of your neck. Salam upon the cheeks that stayed on sand of Karbala. As-salamu ala al-khadd al-tareem. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم إلهي بمحمد وعلي وفاطمة والحسن والحسين وبالتسعة المعصومين من ذرية الحسين استجب دعواتنا يا الله يا الله يا الله يا رحمن يا رحيم يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلبي على دينك ثبت قلوبنا على دينك يا الله. Oh Allah, keep our hearts firm upon your religion ya Allah. Mu'minina mu'minat who are in difficulty, those who are unwell, grant them the quick recovery and relief ya Allah. Mu'minina mu'minat who departed our gatherings, who passed away from our family members, ancestors, Ya Allah, grant them abundance of your mercy, Ya Allah. Grant us the opportunity to prepare for the Imam of our time, bring forth the return of the Imam, Ya Allah. إلى أرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات الشهداء والصالحين، إلى أرواح موتى الحاضرين الباذلين المؤسسين. رحم الله من قرأ السورة المباركة الفاتحة حفظها صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد.
بسم الله.